Hey everybody, and welcome back to That Vinyl channel. Recently we looked at some fantastic debut albums of the 1980s, but if you're not familiar with the 1970s, stick around. So we're going to be showing some awesome debut albums of the 1970s. So I have 10 debut albums here, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for the first album here we have the debut album of the Geils Band. This is from 1970. Geils would go on to have some really big hits such as Centerfold, Freeze Frame, and Love Styx. This here is a more bluesy album. There's a lot more blues riffs and blues bass, but you can hear how Geils went from this all the way to their more current stuff, but it still sounds like Geils. It's a great album. So there you go. That's the first one. Okay, and the next one is from 1971, and this is Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen. Now, this group initially formed in 1967. They would go on to have a very, very long career. As a matter of fact, they went on to release albums for a very long time. The very last album that they put out was in 2021. They're known for such hits as Hot Rod Linking, Truck Driving Man, and That's What I Like About You. But this here is where it all started. This is their very first album, again released in 1971. Okay, and the next album here is going to be Styx. This here is from 1972, and this is their debut album. Now, Styx would go on to have such hits such as Babe, Come Sail Away, Too Much Time on My Hands. Styx as well has continued to release albums all through their career. The very last album was also released in 2021. Now, this was issued on a very small label in Chicago. It's called Wood and Nickel. So that's what this album is actually released on. Unfortunately, there wasn't really any hits on this album, but it's still a great album. It's more progressive rock than a lot of their later material. But if you like Styx, I recommend you go ahead and give this a listen. All right, and next we're going to go on to the group Exile. Now, Exile was formed in 1963. They're mainly known as a pop and country band. But this one here is actually more like Deep Purple, more like a folksy progressive sound. It's actually a really good album by them. And just like, and this album is from 1973, okay, and it's a self-titled album. So just like the last album, this one was also issued on the Wood and Nickel label, again, a small Chicago label. They were around only about 10 years, and they did not release a whole lot of albums. But it was cool that this was also released on Wood and Nickel. So that's Exile's debut album. Okay, and the next album up is going to be from a group called Heart. Heart was formed in 1967. This is their debut album, which is Dreamboat Annie. It was released in 1975. Now, Heart would have a very long career. Their last album that they put out was actually in 2016. This album was put out on the Mushroom label, so I'll go ahead and show you that. Very, very cool. So and this album would have two of the biggest hits. Of course, they have a whole slew of hits, but this album would have Magic Man and Crazy on You, which are two iconic songs by Heart. But again, this here is Heart's debut album from 1975. All right, next on the list is the Walter Murphy Band, and this is from 1976. This is the first and only album that the Walter Murphy Band put out, but it had a huge hit, a #1 hit, not just in the US, but like in 5 or 6 different countries. The song went to #1, and that was The Fifth of Beethoven, which is also the name of the album. The song appeared on the Saturday Night Fever movie and on the soundtrack. It was a huge, huge hit. So Walter Murphy would go on to do Family Guy. He composes most of the music in Family Guy, including the title song from the beginning of the show. But it's a great, great album. Again, this is from 1976. Okay, and the next album is from one of my favorite bands, and this is Foreigner. Now, they formed in 1976. This is their debut self-titled album from 1977. Foreigner would also have a very long career. Their last studio album would be released in 1994, but all through even to today, they still continue to put out live albums. So they definitely are still active and they're still touring. So this album here, they had 2 big hits, which is Feels Like the First Time and Cold as Ice, but they would go on to have other hits such as Head Games and Jukebox Hero. So, but Foreigner is definitely a great album, a great band, and this is a great album. Alright, so the next album is going to be from a band called Toto. Now, this album here was released in 1978. It was a self-titled album. It had a couple great songs off this album, including Hold the Line and Georgie Porgy. Toto would go on and have a very successful career. They would have some of the most iconic songs of the 1980s, including Africa, Rosanna, and 99. Their very last album, their very last studio album they put out was in 2020. So I really like Toto a lot. Toto's up there and like my top 5 most favorite bands. So, but this here is a great a debut album. Again, this is from 1978. Okay, and next is going to be the self-titled debut album released in 1978. This is from Van Halen. Now, Van Halen started in 1974, so they would go on to have some great hits such as Jump, Hot for Teacher, and Why Can't This Be Love. On this album, they had some great releases, Running with the Devil and You Really Got Me. Now, this group would be home to a feud between David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. So a lot of people know about that. My wife actually refers to the Sammy Hagar years as Van Hagar, since she prefers Van Halen with David Lee Roth. So I like Van Halen. It doesn't matter who the lead singer is, as long as it's Van Halen, I like it. But they had a very long career and put out a lot of albums, a lot of great music, a lot of great contributions to rock and roll music. So, but again, it all started here with this debut album from 1978. Okay, and the final album on my list, but definitely not the least album. This is M, New York, London, Paris, Munich. It had the #1 hit, Pop Music. It was a huge hit. I really like this band a lot. I really like the song Pop Music. I like the album overall. It's really good. It's like a new wave poppy disco type stuff. So, M will go on to release a handful of albums. The very last one was in 1982. But there is some word out there. I've heard that he's working on a new album. Not sure when, if or when that would be released. But anyways, again, this here is the final album by M, released in 1979. So that is my video of amazing debut albums of the 1970s. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave that down below. I'll be sure to go ahead and answer you. But I do want to thank everybody for watching today, and I'll see you all next time.